Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Miriam Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to get started? Then let's get going. Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today, we cross the ocean to France to get to know genealogist Anne Stofferis. Anne, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Let's get started by having you tell us about yourself and how you got started in genealogy. So, when did this interest in genealogy begin for you?
It started at the age of 15. I have a part of my family who lives in France, and she's the grandchild of a very famous scientific in Belgium. She was always saying, I would like to, when I be retired, to do some research concerning my great-grandfather. And I started with that research at that moment that the passion for genealogy started also.
So what was the relation of that person to you? Was she a cousin?
Yes, she was married to a cousin of mine. She knew that she had a famous great-grandfather in her family, but that man, he lived in Ghent. He worked at the University of Ghent, and he had 4 children. And I found the other descendants of the other 3 children back. And in 1996, I reunited the whole family, all the descendants of that famous scientific in Belgium.
So this person that we're talking about, his name, I believe, is Joseph PLATEAU?
Yes, it is.
So he's a Belgian scientist.
Yes.
Born in 1801 and died in 1883.
Yes.
So this is the thing that got you started. Can you tell us a little bit about the project, the research that you did, and ultimately the reunion that happened as a result?
So I started with my family member. I started at the same time also to contact the University of Ghent because he was a scientist related to the University of Ghent, and they had still some archives and a biography about his life. So that's in the biography I found that he had 3 other children. I decided to find the descendants back of the 3 other children. So there was a part that was based on research in the archives of different universities in Belgium, but also several records to find the family members back. And the family is not living anymore only in Belgium, but they are separated and they are living apart. And there are part family members who are living in Belgium, another part in France, and another part in the United Kingdom. And they didn't have any contact anymore between them. So it was a research that took place for several years. Finally, in 96, I brought them together in a reunion that took place in Ghent. That was very interesting because they had still some important scientific material about their great-great-grandfather, and that was important for the University of Ghent and to put a new light on the life and the scientific work of Joseph PLATEAU.
When you organized this reunion and you contacted all these people, how many of them, what was their reaction when you told them that they are descended from this famous scientist?
Some of them knew that they were related to that famous scientist. Some of them didn't. It was not easy to contact them or to get in touch with them. It took a lot of time and a lot of patience because you have to create a relationship. You have to create a certain kind of trust. But finally, I had a lot of information and also records that could prove my research. And finally, there were a lot to come over to Ghent and to see one another, and then to create again contact between one another. That was the most important thing that took place that day. They were delighted to see one another, and they were delighted to see also the work of their great-great-grandfather.
Did you feel a feeling of success after you had accomplished that?
Yes, definitely. Because I said I was 15 when I started that research, so it took me a lot of years to do that kind of research, and I didn't had my degree of historian at that moment. So yes, I was very proud of myself with what I achieved finally. Yes. And today I'm still in contact with different descendants of Joseph PLATEAU. Yeah, I created a friendship with them, and that's very nice.
Did anyone from the university come to the reunion?
Yes, they participated to the reunion, and they also organized an exposition about the life and the work of Joseph PLATEAU. Yes, it was a very interactive reunion.
I just want to take a moment at this point to mention something for our audience. For those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you'll know that I predominantly interview people who speak English natively, people from the US or Canada or England or Australia. We do interview some people whose first language is not English, but it's very rare. And a lot of times I know those people very well beforehand, so I'm very familiar with how well they speak. So I just want to take a moment to say how brave you are to come on the podcast when English is not your first language, and
Thank you.
to share with us the experience of genealogists, because there are many genealogists who are not native English speakers. You know, there's more than just the English-speaking world. So I was very happy to discover you, and even more happy that you had agreed to come on the show. When you are dealing with clients, because your clients probably come from other countries,
yes.
How often are you communicating with them by phone? Probably not too often, huh? Mostly you're emailing?
Yes, mostly emailing. But 2 weeks ago, I saw on my phone 001, and I was thinking, oh my God, that's America, because I found my family 3 years ago back in America. And I thought, oh, that must be some not good news. They are calling me. And no, it was the first time I had an American client on the line who don't like to mail a lot. Mm-hmm. So she decided to call me, and it was a very interesting conversation. And I received today the mission that I have to do, the research that I have to do for her. It's not often that I speak to my clients.
That's excellent, though, you know, that you had the chance to speak to her, and she did hire you. So that is good, because it would be important to her that she can communicate with you, since she likes to talk by phone.
Yes, indeed. I think we have a lot of genealogists over here in France, but unfortunately not all of them can speak other languages like English or Dutch or German. And I think it's important that there is no distance between the client and the genealogist in language, because the client has an important question. He has a big question that we have to answer. And if there is already problems with the language, it can be difficult.
You're located in France, but you're from Belgium.
Yes.
Tell us about how you ended up in France.
I arrived in France in 2004 because, firstly, I studied history at the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. Then I decided to do a master degree in tourism and management in Antwerp, also in Belgium. I had to do
an internship.
Yes, and so I love France. I love the French language, the way of living, and I decided to do that internship in Paris. Yeah, after that internship, Some people at the Belgian Embassy noticed me and they invited me to start working at the Belgian Embassy in Paris. So that's how I arrived in France.
Now, you have a master's degree in tourism and management. Was your internship in a related area to tourism and management?
Yes, it was. We were very interested to see how the French people are reacting on publicity that was made by the Flemish tourism organization in Paris. You have the subway, and they had decided to make a kind of publicity of an event that was going on in Antwerp. And I had to see how the French and the Parisian people were reacting on that publicity, because there is a different culture. The Belgian and the French culture are not the same, and even in the publicity, in the way, or in the marketing, it's not the same neither. And it's not so. It's a big challenge to to invite French people to Belgium and to visit cultural events in Belgium. So it was a very interesting study that I did over there.
So what did you do for the embassy, the Belgian embassy in Paris, when you were working there?
I was working at the, do you say consular? So I was making identity cards. I was also searching for people, Belgian people, who left Belgium without saying to tax office that they were going to France, and I had to find them back. So it's very strange. I was already searching for people when I worked at the embassy, and today when I'm doing hair search, it's a little bit similar. I have to find also living heirs for an estate or to inherit it. So it's very strange, the similarity between them. And yeah, it was a very interesting job at the embassy.
Yeah, I can see that would be very good training for doing heir research.
Yes, indeed.
For sure. All right, so that brings us to opening your business. Tell us about the name of your company and what your genealogy company does.
So the name of my company is International Genealogy Services. I cover a broad range of specializations. I'm doing research concerning ancestral roots to France, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. I'm doing also hair and estate research for beneficiaries of life insurance. It can be also research concerning culture and industrial heritage. I can help you to find your ancestral roots back in France, in Belgium, and organize family reunions. And I transcribe and translate also original documents in Dutch, French, English, and German.
Your website says that you are operating nationally and internationally with other researchers and genealogists. So tell me about that. Do you primarily stay in France and do the French research? And do you have other people in, say, Germany or Belgium? Because I'm just curious, because you say you work with other researchers. How does that work with your company?
When I have to work in Belgium or Belgian mission, I'm doing it by myself because I still have my family over there. So I travel a lot between France and Belgium. But if it's concerning the Netherlands or Germany, there is a collaboration between other researchers, other professional genealogists, and we are collaborating together. That's very interesting also to exchange with one another and to install a good relationship between us.
When people contact you, when potential clients contact you, because you're in France, are they mostly asking for French research, or do you get a lot of people asking for Dutch or Belgian research?
When the public is a private public, I can say today that my clients are not coming from France, unfortunately, but most of them are coming from abroad. It can be Australia, it can be America. It's private, public, and
your clients are coming mostly Americans or Canadians or Australians, probably from wherever. What countries are they asking you for research from? Are they asking you to do research in France or Belgium or the Netherlands? I'm just guessing because you're in France, I think most people probably ask you to do French research.
Yeah, if it's a private public, the most part of them is asking me to do the research in France. But I'm also working on hair cases. Because of my language skills, I'm working for French hair companies who are asking me to do the hair search in Belgium, and the biggest part of that hair search is going on in Flanders because I'm Dutch, I'm native, it's my native language, so they have a lot of problems because between the First and the Second World War, a big part of Flemish people went away from Flanders. A part went to America, but another part, they came over in the north of France. And so today we have notaries who are still have to do research in Flanders. Then it's a public, like hair search companies or notaries who are asking me to do the research in Belgium.
Okay, so here in the States, we would say you have private clients who are asking you to do the French genealogical research, and then you're working for companies in France. Now, these are law firms mostly?
Yes. Okay. Yes, mostly, yes.
Are there very many law firms? Is there a lot of demand for hair research in France?
Yes. It's there are a lot of hair search companies over here. There are not so many in Belgium, so because the law concerning inheritance is different in Belgium, I have the impression that the profession of genealogist in Belgium is not known very well if we compare it with here in France. In France, for example, you have a chamber of professional genealogists, and you have to present yourself with a file. Yeah, you have to present yourself that you have a degree in history or a law degree. And once you are accepted, you have to also follow deontological code. And that we don't have in Belgium. And I think there is a lot of work to do in Belgium also, so that the people know what it is being a genealogist.
So here in the United States, we have two types of heir researchers. We have heir researchers who are hired by law firms, and they work for an hourly rate, and they do what the law firm asks of them, and then they submit their report or whatever is needed. And then there's another type of heir researcher who does the work, but they don't get paid an hourly rate. They get paid a percentage of the award, so to speak, of the amount that is being given from the probate. How does it work in France? Are there laws that say it has to be one way or the other way?
No, it's exactly the same. I can work for a hair company with a rate, or I can work also with a percentage. It's exactly the same like in the United States.
Do you do both, or do you have a preference for one or the other?
I'm only existing for 3 years now. And when you're doing or working with a percentage, you have to be very careful, because that means that if you have to research the heirs and they are living abroad, then you have to pay the travel cost by your own in a first moment. So you need money. I'm careful with it at the moment because I'm a young company, and I found a hair search company here in France who is paying me per rate, but also percentage. But at the moment, I prefer to be paid by rate if it's possible.
And one of the things I noticed is that when you decided to open your genealogy business in France, that you took a course called Historical and Probate Research at the Institut Français de Formation de la Généalogie. That's my best attempt.
Très bien. Bravo.
Can you tell us a little bit about that course and what you had to do in it?
In that course, it was divided in, again, genealogical research. It's like an historian has to do. We received information about the different sources that we can consult here in France. So that was not so, it was interesting for me, but as a historian, I knew that already. The second biggest part of that course was concerning probate research, and more precisely concerning the law that we are having over here in France and the different ways or sources that we can consult to do that type of research. What I learned also is that we can write a genealogy about a family, but you can also write a genealogy about a house or about abandoned buildings, estates, or properties. And that's also a very interesting subject that I propose to my clients. Next month, I will be participating to a European conference in Brussels, because we have still nobility here in Europe. And in France, you have the region of La Loire, where you have a lot of castles. But those families are today confronted with big problems, because it takes a lot of money to maintain the houses, the castles. And the government is not always helping, or the laws are very strict. And they are asking themselves a lot of questions. They are deciding to open their castles for the public and to organize all kinds of events to gather money. And that's also very interesting for us, genealogists and historians, to help in those projects. So I'm going to present my profession and what I can do next month in Brussels to those owners or noble families who has interesting cultural heritage. And the same is going on here also concerning industrial heritage. Unfortunately, there is a lot of industrial heritage that's going away, and our next generations don't know what's a coal mine, for example. In the north part of France, you have a lot of coal mines. And again, we can be very important to help these projects and to keep the memory, the culture, industrial memory going on for our next generations.
So in the next 5 years, can you see yourself spending more time on one of these types of research? Because you've mentioned a lot of things here, the air research and the house or castle histories, the industrial histories, reunions, private client research. You'll probably see some trends that people are asking for more research in one area than the other. You might go to the conference next month and then find that all of your time is taking up researching castles. Where do you predict you'll be in 5 years?
That's very difficult for me. You see, a year ago, I was doing research mostly for private clients, and I was always saying to my accountant, you will see, it will be difficult for me to do hair research or to introduce myself to the world of noble people. And a year after, I'm doing hair research, and I entered in the world of the noble people. I hope in the next few years that it's difficult to me today to say today what will be the specialization of my company. It's a little bit too early to say it today, I think. I am interested in the different subjects. Finally, it's like a puzzle. They all belong together. And when I'm doing research for private people, I'm having experience that I can use also in hair search. So it's interesting. But I realize that at a certain moment, one of the specializations or services will have my priority. But today it's a little bit too early to see a trend. I'm doing more and more hair search, I have to admit.
This is really interesting to me. You didn't really see yourself doing that much with the heir research and with the noble families. So what did you do to make contact with heir research firms, with law firms?
Because I didn't thought that I was going doing hair research, because here in France we have a lot of concurrency and a lot of other companies, and you have companies that are existing since the 19th century. So they have their reputation, they have their name, and they are very big. So it's very difficult to concurrent against them. But one of my most important gain is my language skill. And they are interested in those language skills. And also because I'm a Belgian historian, so I can work with the archives in Belgium. I can work with the archives in France, in the Netherlands. So that's very interesting for them.
So what I want to know is, did you contact them and said, hey, I'm from Belgium, I speak all these languages, or did you just put up a website and they found you? I want to know who made the contact.
I did it on different ways. I created my website in 4 languages. I made publicity in magazines for private public, but also for the public of the notaries, the life insurance here in France, the lawyers. And finally, I decided also to present myself to the notaries of the northern part of France. I visit them, nearly all of them. There are a big part. And I visit them and I presented myself. But I also contacted the notaries in Belgium, in Holland, in Luxembourg by mail. And I are already working for some of them. So you see that I tried different ways to approach my clients.
So you did a lot of research and then you put it into action in different ways and made it happen.
Before I created my company, I took classes over here in France to be an entrepreneur, and I've written my business plan. I had courses about accountancy, marketing, and the most important is your business plan and to see your strengths, but also your weaknesses, but also see what the strengths and the weaknesses are from your concurrents. And then you have to set up a plan and to go and to take the risk and to act finally.
That's for sure. So when you say you presented yourself to these Flemish companies on the North Shore, did you contact them first and schedule an appointment, or did you just turn up at their door and said, let me introduce myself to you?
No. I've contacted them firstly by phone. I presented myself. And I asked them if it would be possible to meet. And most of them told me, yes, we are interested in meeting you. Again, as I said before, because you have a big community of Belgian Flemish people who immigrated to the north part of France. And today you have still a lot of people over here who have a Flemish name. And there are still hair cases related to Belgium, to Flanders. It's a gain for me.
It sounds like you did a lot of hard work.
I did. And I'm still doing. And today, as I said before, you have here a chamber of professional genealogists, but it's a profession that is recognized over here in France, but unfortunately not very well in Belgium. And I'm trying to do everything also in Belgium. We had terrorist attacks here in France. We had them in Belgium. And that has consequences on tourism. And we see in Belgium that a lot of people are more and more interested in where do I come from. You have, for example, in Antwerp, you have the Red Star Line Museum. The Red Star Line is a boat company, and a lot of European people took the boat to immigrate to America. And you see a lot of American people but also European people are interested in that museum and are interested in finding their identity back. And I think there is a lot of work to do also concerning genealogical tourism in Belgium, but also in France.
Yeah, are there any museums or research centers that deal with the ports in France? You know, you mentioned the one in the boat, the Red Line in Antwerp, but what about in France? Because lots of people left from there as well.
Some weeks ago, I went to les Archives départementales de Rouen. Rouen is a city in Normandy, and a lot of people took the boat from Le Havre to go to the United States, Australia, or to the South of America. And I was sad and happy at the same time. I was a little bit sad because I know very well the museum in Antwerp, the Red Star Line, and it's very interesting. It's like you are taking the boat by yourself and you are immigrating to America, for example. And that I was missing a little bit over here in France, but I was very happy when I consulted the archives in Rouen because they possess a lot of information concerning the immigration, also passenger lists. There were big, Le Havre is a very big port, so you had a lot of boats. Yeah, we have very interesting archives over here also.
So some of your clients are American or Australian or Canadian. Do you do anything intentionally to market to them, to advertise to them?
I have my company on Facebook, on Twitter. That's the way I try to let them know that I exist.
You were talking about working with other European researchers, such as in the Netherlands and such. What sort of networking opportunities do you have with other genealogists on continental Europe? How do you find them? How do you reach out to them? How do you get to know them?
We get to know each other because we are participating to events, genealogical events that are going on in the Netherlands, for example, or in Belgium, or in the UK. And that's a possibility to meet each other. I've already had another researcher in Vienna, in Austria, who contacted me by APG. So there are different kinds of way, the internet, publicity, participating at European genealogical events so that we can meet each other and that we can exchange our experiences.
I don't know very many European genealogists, but I know a few. And when I was researching you for this interview, when I was looking at your business page and your APG directory and all that, and I noticed your Facebook page. So I noticed that you are familiar with some of the genealogists that I know, such as Yvette Hoytink, who's been interviewed on this podcast, Ursula Krause, who's been interviewed on this podcast, and John Buren, who has not been interviewed, but should be. He has no excuse for not coming on. So tell me a little bit about using them as an example. How did you come into contact with them?
I've met John Buren, for example, in Belgium. We have an organization in the Flemish part of Belgium, Familiegund, who organizes regularly genealogical events, and they are inviting professional genealogists from other countries. So that was an opportunity for me to meet John. Yvette, I've met her for the first time in June in Utrecht when there was an event over there. And now with Ursula, we are regularly having Skype conferences so that we can exchange our experiences. But we all have some difficulties with a subject, or we can have difficulties with a client, or we don't know how to respond. And it's interesting if we can exchange and if we can hear another opinion. I think it would be interesting also. There would be a kind of APG, but a kind of European APG, so that the clients from abroad know that, okay, I'm searching a genealogist in Belgium, for example, and he has a reference, and you know that he's respecting the ontological code, and that he's a serious researcher, because unfortunately you have also researchers, genealogists who didn't study history or law and who are presenting themselves, and that's a little bit difficult for us who are serious and who want to be taken serious also.
It sounds like you are building a strong network with this small group of people. And
yes, we are.
And then I'm sure over time it will expand. It seems to me that the way I found you, but I could be wrong, was on Twitter. The way I know that the reason you're on this podcast is because we communicated through Twitter. I'm not sure if we communicated before that or not.
No, it was through Twitter. Yes.
So there you go. For all of you people out there who question whether Twitter is a good social media, there's your answer. It's a definite yes. I love Twitter, yes. and that is what connected it. That is exactly why An is here talking to me right now, because somehow we connected on Twitter, and it's effective. I think it's really great for connecting with people.
It is. I don't have a blog like other of my European colleagues have. To be honest, I don't have the time for it. But I'm trying to put on Facebook, on Twitter, a lot of tweets or information concerning genealogy, history, what's going on over here in France, what's going on in Belgium, what's going on in the Netherlands, what's going on in Europe. I think that's very important to make history, to make genealogy alive.
I agree. I think it's great. All right, An, I think it's time that we head into the lightning round.
Okay.
This is when I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and you do the best you can.
Okay.
What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your genealogy business?
To find clients.
What's the best advice you've ever received from someone else?
To be honest in your work, to be honest in your accountancy.
What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
To take the risk, and if you have a dream, to go for it.
And write your business plan.
Yes, of course. Yeah, and also to study, you have to start with yourself and to study your own strengths and weaknesses, and then you look to the concurrency, and you are saying by yourself, what are they providing, or what can I provide that they are not providing? Yeah, you have to go for it. Jump.
So what is your preferred social media channel?
Facebook.
If you can recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be? And it can be any type of book. It doesn't have to be a genealogy book. It could be a...
And can it be in French?
Anything you like.
Okay. At the moment, I'm reading a book that's called Guider les jeunes sur la piste de leurs ancêtres. So it's helping or guiding the young generation on their search concerning their ancestors. Because over here in France, in the schools, we are trying to put a lot of importance on genealogical research and for the younger generation, so that they know from where they are coming, what are their roots, because we have a lot of mixity, a lot of origins in our schools, and the consequence of that is that we will understand one another better and understand one another's history, one another's identity, before we are starting to criticize. That's very important, and we have to start with it in schools. And I'm reading that book at the moment.
And who is the author?
Evelyne Duret.
Okay, so we'll have a link to that in the show notes for anybody who might be interested. Give our audience one parting piece of advice, and then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
You can contact me by my website, International Genealogy Services.com, or by Facebook or by Twitter.
And any advice for our listeners?
I would say when you have a dream, and let us call it a genealogical dream, historical dream, firstly go for it because it's so interesting. And for myself, I had some moments of, oh my God, what's going on? But you don't have to give up. If it's a dream, if you have the passion, well, that will guide you. And with a good business plan and with some good advisors like an accountant or somebody for the marketing, the dream will take place.
Anne Stofferis, thank you so much for coming on the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Wasn't it fun getting to know Belgian-born but residing in France genealogist Anne Stofferis? Anne shared with us the different perceptions of genealogists in Belgium versus France, what it's like to do heir research in France, the possibility of doing house or castle histories for nobility, and that entrepreneurs everywhere succeed from hard work. One note about this interview, it was recorded several years ago, so I'm sure things have changed somewhat in her business. Anne is building her business based on choosing her service, heir research, analyzing her strengths, her familiarity with many foreign languages, and identifying her ideal target clients, law firms on the north coast of France who need both French and Flemish-speaking researchers and familiarity with Flemish history and records. By identifying who most needed her unique services, she was able to showcase her strengths and make a strong case for getting hired. For today's action item, I'd like you to take a stab at doing the same thing. Choose a service, analyze your strengths, and identify ideal clients. Your strengths should include qualities or skills that differentiate you from everyone else who does the same service. For instance, many genealogists offer heir research services, but not so many researchers in France offer the service along with knowledge of the Flemish language. Let's take an example of a genealogist who offers research services in colonial New York. His or her strength could be their ability to read both 17th century English and Dutch handwriting. Who could the potential clients be? The obvious answer would be private clients who have New Netherland ancestors. But let's think beyond that. How about authors who write about New York history, New Netherland history, or even simply colonial America? You could also potentially market your services to museums and curators focused on colonial America. Strengths can be a lot of things, from proximity to an in-demand location, think of the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, to a specific skill such as understanding how a surveyor does his job, which might be good for interpreting old deeds, or more familiarity with a particular record group than anyone else around. Put all of this together and see if it helps you look at your business in a new light. That's it for this time. Until we meet again, keep improving your business skills and take at least one step to push your business forward. The Genealogy Professional Podcast is a production of Fieldstone Common Media. Copyright 2020. Executive producer, Mariam Pierre-Louis. Creative producer, George Edwards. Technical director, Jean-Luc Pierre-Louis Jr.